That's a classic song right there, and I had no idea the connection. Didn't even think about it till you said it when we started the show.
Yeah, you know, like I said before, I didn't know it myself, man. My cousin, another of my cousins, was watching the documentary with. He was watching the documentary, and he called Lenny. Him and Lenny was doing something, and he said, "You know, that's your cousin right there." And then he said, "No, how he, you know, my cousin, he was the family historian. Well, that's Auntie so and so's nephew's son's cousin on the third side, whatever the case may be. How can I catch up with him?" Then I get a call from Jay King, and Jay King like, "Hey man, you know Lonzo? Well, yeah, I know Lonzo." And he put us on the phone. We had a 4-way going, and that's how we hooked it up, man. And we've been cool as ice ever since. In fact, it was crazy because
that's dope. Well,
right before that, I was trying to book Lenny at the Hollywood Park Casino, and I was having problems with one of my local competition from Uncle Jam's Army. He didn't want him to book, and he had booked it before, and he didn't want Lenny to play for me. He said, "Man, that's my cousin, fool. I'm not gonna let you get him for my family." My boy was so molded; he didn't know how to act. But yeah, that family thing has stepped up and came to the rescue a couple times. That's how I hooked up with Zap. That's how I hooked up with Zap.
That's crazy.
Yeah, through Lenny.
Really?
Yeah, he hooked me up with Zap, hooked me up with Vesta Williams and my boy. Both of them passed. Vesta Williams and what's the guy's name? Played for the Temptations, Ollie Woodson. They all came from my Lenny connection. Because I was trying to book some single track artists at my club, Eve After Dark, and just do a grown folks thing. And we were able to do it. And like I said, I needed a connection. He was that connection. I was able to book all them acts directly, which keeps the managers out and keeps out the agents and stuff. And I got a good deal, and they made their money, and it was a good show for everybody. Yep, Vesta.
Nice.
And
love that, man. Let's talk a little bit. We got about 20 more minutes.
You got
Let's answer some questions. Oh, sorry, we got a little delay. My bad.
Just a little one.
All right. Yeah. Before we continue, I'm going to ask everybody to hit that like button if you haven't already. Smash that like button, and please hit that subscribe button if this is your first time joining the channel and you like what you hear. Last week, Lonzo, we had Mike Frankie on talking about banging on wax. He was the engineer on the project. Anyone who hasn't checked that interview out, I definitely recommend checking it out, especially if you love the Banging on Wax project. But you guys talked about Russ Regan, and according to Mike Frankie, he, quote, didn't have the best reputation in the business. Can you talk to us about Russ Regan, who he is, what we know about him, and your personal experiences with him?
Russ Regan was one of them cats, man, that he had been successful for a while. And according to what I was told, which I can't say is true or not, he hit a bad streak and just got ruthless, just started ganking, especially when it came to hip hop folks. He tied into I think it was Maury Alexander, Jerry's partner, and a lot of folks, man, got ripped off in that whole little process right there, Doc. I never really dealt with him. I met him before, but by the time I met him, I'd already been warned about it. In fact, because I had people like Swamp Dogg, Etta James in my corner, they knew all the shysters, and his name was on the shyster list, okay? Maury Alexander was on the shyster list. And these people knew that you didn't know about publishing. They knew that you would just get excited about being, some people would get excited about being an artist. Some people didn't think about signing, reading contract. They just signed them and busted the check. Meanwhile, you didn't give away everything you owned for the rest of your life. And that's how they preyed on a lot of people, especially young black folks in the game. And these guys, these names kept popping up in those conversations.
Okay. Now, Lenny Williams' song, "Cause I Love You," you said earlier, 7.5 minute song. Your song, "Lovers," 8 minute long. What went behind making a song that long back in the day? Was there a theory behind it? Was there a reasoning behind it?
Nah, man, you got to understand, we were doing records back in the day. We were copying off of other people. And the record that we copied off of was Float On by the Floaters. I think the Floaters might have been about 8 minutes, but it had damn near a 2-minute intro. You know, you float on, and the music. I mean, the music would do its thing, and then the float on, and then you hear the little all kind of little shit going on, and you heard all these instruments before you got to the first dude say anything. You might have been 2.5 minutes in the song, because back then the intros of the songs were just as important as the lyrics. Me and my boy Julian Jackson, one of the baddest DJs that ever touched turntables, had this same conversation about 2 weeks ago. We were talking about how back in the day, the intro, most A&R people gave you 45 seconds to get their attention, which means usually the beat or the intro would be part of the lot, part of the hook, okay? And you know that was the groove right there. And if the groove got you, you might let me start singing. If the groove didn't get you, I'm not going. I probably won't pay no attention. That's why if you listen to most of your songs, especially from the '80s, they had 2 minute, maybe a 45-second intros, okay, where you just heard music, and that was for two reasons. One, to establish the beat, and also that's when mixing started to play in the fact. Mixing became a big part of DJing, especially in the '70s. Shit, Float On came out in the '70s. So all that doom, all that shit right there, that was all a part of the mix for, you know, and you could lay records on top of it, and it just made the whole thing that much more flexible as far as playing with the DJ. And we just followed the same footsteps. Those were our blueprints, Doc.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Let's go back a few weeks ago to when we were discussing Yella's documentary. Now, in N.W.A, I, as a fan, as a supporter of them back in the day, we didn't necessarily know Yella as the rapper, quote. He was more the beat maker along with Dre, engineer, and things like that. But however, he mentioned in the documentary that you needed a rapper in the group, so that's why you brought him on. Can you tell us about that and what you know about his transition from a rapper to a beat maker?
Yella, a rapper? Yella only rapped on 2 songs. That was Turn Up the Lights and Lovers.
That's what he said?
Yeah.
Yeah, he said, quote, in the documentary, Lonzo needed a rapper, so he brought me on. That's why he brought me on.
I'm going to look at that again. Because he was a DJ.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I heard that. I wrote it down word for word.
I can't ever recall. To get Yella to rap, first of all, you had to write all his lyrics. I wrote most of his lyrics. Me or Clientele wrote